even my own, I don't know if I've heard from another grown man often, I love you. It doesn't resonate. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I have found myself in this position where I was like, you know what? I refuse. I refuse not to. Because if you die and I never see you again and you don't know I love you, got me chopped. It's not gonna happen. What's up, everybody? I'm back again. You know what it is. It's Tre'd Talk, and I'm your host, Tre Tipton. And if you didn't know, now you know. And if you knew, tell everybody you know. And today I got an amazing guest, one of my favorite people. I call him Uncle Jim. But my man, Jim Williams, to the left of me. How we doing?
Doing well.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. So, Jim, there's only one thing, Jim. When you're speaking in the microphone, take it whatever you want to go. I'm the same way, bro. I be over here moving. You'll see me grooving. I grab the mic like I'm Michael Jackson. So if there's anything that we could do for you today, let's have fun. Say what you want to say. Put it all out there. You know what I mean? So the first topic I got to ask you about, man, is like, how did we get here? Like, I know you're not originally a TCS guy.
Right.
I heard that you're a legend in the sales game all around the country. So talk to me a little bit. What's been going?
It's interesting. Everybody always says that. I think legendary is based on people's opinion. My view is a little bit different, I guess. So maybe it's a humble approach. But yeah, so I mean, I've known Brian for ages. Brian and I go way back. I'd say probably close to 20 years now. So we had a chance to work together as peers previously. You know, he and I managed a bunch of retail store locations, and that's how he and I became connected. I've stayed connected with him for, you know, the time since he's left that business, and I've remained. So, you know, a good chance to kind of see what he's doing and really kind of see, you know, bigger picture, what's out there, and, you know, maybe where there's an opportunity and a fit.
Wow. So, like, with that said, you and Brian have really been friends for a while now. 20 years, you put some time in, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
with any relationship. 20 years is a long time. So, with that said, man, what was it like when you first met Brian? Like, were you guys, like, immediately you hit it off, or were you like, that's my dog, but we got to grind? Like, what was the,
You know,
what I'm saying?
I feel like when I first met Brian, I always looked at him as like a leader who was maybe a little bit more advanced, and I had a learning opportunity. So, I mean, where I think he was great from a coaching perspective, talent development, I think was really good for him. You know, those were key places where I thought I could learn from him, and I really looked up to him a lot. So, you know, for me, I think it was really kind of that opportunity to develop myself and become better as a leader. You know, and I think that's really kind of where I was attracted to him.
And that's huge, man, because I feel like good leadership follows other good leadership. You know what I mean? And every time I meet you, bro, every time I sit down with you, you're always the same person. That's the one thing I do really like commend you for, is because you don't change for nobody. You know what I mean? Like, you are the same Jim Williams with everybody. And it's hard for people to do that, right? I feel like a lot of people in the world right now are chameleons.
Yeah.
They can't really be themselves because we look at social media so often. Everybody's giving fake personas. Well, Jim, you don't give no fake persona, dog. You is as Jim comes, man. So that's what I really respect about you. So with that said, man, like, tell me a little bit about your personal life, man. Like, what are some of the things that you're extremely passionate about that somebody may not know about Jim?
I think for me, I mean, probably family is my biggest priority. I feel like over the last handful of years, I've kind of changed my mindset with my family. Before it was I was participating as a part of, but I feel like I've become this protector role as I age and grow older and see my kids growing up. And, you know, I've got a couple people in the family that are remote, and, you know, I've got a daughter in college, one that lives in Georgia. So for
Wow.
me, you know, having that bigger perspective of like, hey, they're not just in the house anymore.
Right.
You know, I've got to, you know, look after them. And,
Right.
you know, if we're ever out in a group, it's interesting because I feel like I put them in front of me so I have visibility. You know, I want to know where they're at so that I can protect them.
Right.
You know, I don't know what it is that's driven me to that, but it's something that's become more and more evident
Right.
over the last several years. And, you know, I think for me, as I continue to grow, you know, in the family and be a part of, you know, it's just important that everybody's there. You know, I had a buddy that I just found out passed away last night, and
Sorry to hear
I mean,
that again,
it
man.
really hit me hard. You know, because I look at him as like a big family man, and
Right.
you know, he's got kids that are my kids' age, and our sons play football together, and just super impactful. So I mean, it hit me really hard, and I think really, looking at that, I feel like I need to be more participative, a bigger part of the family. I'm there and kind of a, figurehead, but I just need to commit to be more involved with them and be more a part of. Not that I'm not, but
Right.
just more focus on, and anything that I can do differently or little tweaks or changes to be more part of, I think is important. So, I would say family is like really the big component for me, that I strive to be better. I'd love to be the best, but nobody is.
Right.
The kids don't come with an owner's manual when you get them. So, and then, my relationship with my wife, and, we've been together for 24 years now. So
That's hard to do in itself, dog. I ain't gonna lie to you.
yeah.
Congratulations.
So we met in college, and, I think when we met, we were best friends. Like, we hit it off, and, we just clicked. It was like 3 years of friendship where we kind
Wow.
of, chased each other, and, it was interesting to me that we never really dated. Like,
Wow.
we played games and, chased each other around campus, and
Right.
everybody, like, looking back, says that, like, oh, you two used to always chase each other, and
Right.
I think she chased you more, and then other people say, well, no, you were chasing her more.
Right.
And so so it's for me, I think that long-term relationship, like, she's been the stability.
Right.
If I have to compare, like, she's the constant. I know you said a little bit ago that I was the constant, always the
For
same,
sure.
and but I think Joyce has always been kind of the rock, and I rely on her to do a ton of stuff.
Right.
So, it's interesting to me that we've kind of evolved into this new partnership, and kind of side by side together, and doing what we are here. So,
Right.
It's even that much more fun now, to have her there, and it's interesting because we start talking about calls and
Right.
different contacts, and
You got new things to talk about.
yeah. So it's ever evolving, which is awesome.
I love that, Jim. And the one thing that you said, man, is that you seen that there's such a bad thing happening in your life right now, but you found the positive in it. And I don't think people really understand on how important that is in life, because when I lost my mom, I tell people all the time it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, granted, people look at me like I'm psychotic. I would do the same,
Yeah.
right? But when I lost my mom, mind you, this was my best friend. This was my number one. Like, if I lost her, it was going to do some damage to Trey Tipton,
Yeah.
right? My biggest fear, essentially, right? And then my biggest fear came to life. Once it came to life, I had to make a decision, right? Because now I don't have somebody I can call up and say, what do I do?
Right.
What's going on? And I don't know what you and your friends' relationships like, right? But he could be that person for you that you could call and be like, listen, this is what I'm going through. Help me through, right? When I found that out, but one of the biggest things that I said out loud often was, I'm not ready to do this alone. Then I realized I'm not. This is when I realized it. So at my mom's funeral, right, the pastor is talking to everybody. I haven't cried yet. It wasn't coming out of my body.
Yeah.
And if you've been through stuff in your life, you know what it is to be a little bit numb, right? Wasn't able to cry. Like, I was trying to cry. Like, it just wasn't coming out, right? And in that moment, bro, I felt so numb. And then I see the pastor look at me, boom, and he says, you're a man now. And my body, like, my soul separated from my body. I felt like I was in the back of the room. You know what I mean? Because now I remember just looking at my mom and saying, don't worry, I got it now. She was the matriarch,
Yeah.
right? I said, don't worry, I got it now. It's cool. When that was said, right, like I told you, it was the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. In that moment, I remember praying when my mom died, because I remember seeing her lifeless body there, and I remember praying, like, God, I don't know what it is, but now that it's happening, please make me into the man that you need me to be, no matter what it looks like and no matter how hard it is. I don't care how hard it is. Just make me into the man that I need to be for the family that's standing in front of me. Bro, I cannot lie to you, bro. Like, where I've been, where I've gone, how many places I've been, the strength that I have to deal with what I've dealt with comes from that position.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I would not be the man I am, not even close, had that not happened. And I'm very proud of the man that I currently am, right? Then the second thing that you talked about was family and how important your partner is to you. You know what I mean? Because she's constant for you and you're constant for everybody else. When she might also say the opposite. You know what that's called? It's the push-pull. It's supposed to be that way.
Right. Give and take.
Give and take. Some people are in a relationship that just take.
Right.
Some people are in a relationship that just gives. What I really respect about you and Joyce is the fact that when we are around you and we talk about it, the guys talk about it. When we're around you guys, we can't tell that you're not in love. It's like impossible. It's like, oh, yo, that's his best friend, his wife, his love. Like, it's everything in between.
Yeah.
As a young man, single young man, by the way, It's what I'm looking to do in my life. You know what I'm saying? So wanted to commend you there. But now getting into it a little bit, man, if you don't mind, because I shared with you what my mom taught me, what did your friend teach you? And if it's a little bit emotional, I respect it. If you don't want to talk about it, I also respect that. But I'm a very deep guy and I'm straightforward. So I would like to know.
I mean, I think for me, like he was a pillar in the community. You know, he was just always a guy that was giving. So, you know, I think if I look like, you know, my relationship with him is I would go to him for, you know, hey, I need direction here or give me guidance
Right.
here. You know, he was always good, but it was always candid. Like, hey, probably not the greatest idea, or, you know, it was, you know, I think like seeing him, you know, and you know the laid back approach. Oh, he's fine. You know, rub some dirt on it, get back in there, right?
Right.
You know that mentality, like that was him, like former military guy, police officer. You know, I think really, you know, he was kind of that, like, I don't want to call him a figurehead because he was very involved in the community.
Right.
You know, he had a huge network of friends and, you know, referrals and connections.
Right.
And so, you know, I always relied on him for the honest, accurate, candid truth.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it wasn't what I wanted to hear, or maybe it wasn't the feedback that I was looking for, but it was honest. And, you know, I think that's important, especially in relationships, right? Because you don't want that person who is going to tell you what you want to hear. You want that person that's going to tell you the right thing, or you know what their view is, and then help you to make a decision.
Right.
You know, and I think that's critical for me. Like, you know, hey, how does that critical thinking,
Right.
you know, how does that play into a relationship to help me develop and me be better, right? So, yeah, I would say that.
I'm very proud of you, Jim, because most men can't do that, right? They can't admit that they have love or respect for another man, or they can't even say the words itself, I love you, to another man. It blows my mind, but when you really think about how everything's been structured in our lives, even my own, I don't know if I've heard from another grown man often, I love you. It doesn't resonate, you know what I mean? So I have found myself in this position where I was like, you know what? I refuse not to. Because if you die, and I never see you again, and you don't know I love you, got me chopped. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I experienced that with my mom. You know what I mean? So I want to ask you, man, it's obvious, and we talked about it before. I said, anybody who has eyes like you, Jim, you've been through some stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you don't mind, what is the one thing that you're most proud of about yourself right now?
So growing up, I had a father who was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And, you know, I would have, you know, buddies in the neighborhood, or, you know, friends that would come over from school. We'd, you know, camp out in the tent in the backyard.
Right.
And, you know, that was the thing to do growing up in West Virginia, right?
Okay.
You know, I would, my dad would come home from the bar and he would pass out, and, you know, he'd be at the dining room table, and, you know, he'd be passed out, and, you know, we're outside looking in, or, you know, my buddies would all harass me, make fun of me.
Right.
You know, hey, your dad's drunk again. He's passed out at the table. You know, for me, like, that was impactful, right? I mean, I took a lot of that and I internalized it and kind of owned it. And, you know, I thought it was my responsibility, or, you know, it was because of me, or so. You know, I think one of the decisions that I made, you know, my kids were very young at the point when I decided to stop drinking for that reason.
Wow.
So, you know, it was, what I would say is, like, I changed the future. So I feel like there's alcoholism on both sides of my family.
Right.
You know, my mom's side, my dad's side. And I didn't want my kids to see what I saw.
Wow.
I wanted to impact the change that would affect them. And, you know, fortunately, you know, now looking back, right, I've got a 17-year-old son, and my daughter's 19 now. So I can say that what I did then is the right decision that I made when they were super young, that then caused them to change their path.
Right.
Because of what I did. So, I mean, like, I don't drink. I mean, haven't drank. It's been 14 years, I want to say. So
congratulations,
so
man.
long that I've lost count, right?
No,
so
for real, that's huge.
it becomes a behavior where you do the right thing, and you do it because you believe in something.
Right.
And so, I mean, that was the decision that I made. Excuse me. And I feel like that changed the future, the trajectory of where they were going, right? Because they didn't see me picking up beers, and they didn't see me coming home from the bar, or, you know, things like that. So, I would have beers, and when I did, I think one of the things that you may know, or I have a light switch, right? So if I'm into something, like it's my thing,
It's going.
it's on. Like the light switch is on. So like Joyce always jokes, light switch is on. So much that I got a tattoo on my arm of a light switch in the on position. So
Man.
but yeah, I mean, like, dude, when it was on, but it wasn't all the time.
Right.
So I could turn it off, turn it on, but I just thought, you know what, like I don't want them to see it at all. So, I changed that. And I mean, that's probably, I'm getting choked up now, like probably one of the most proud moments that I had is making that decision, having the support in place with Joyce to say, you don't need a beer, and kind of helping me along the way at first, because at first it was a lot of like behavior and routine. Like you go out to dinner, you order a beer with your meal, you drink a beer, you get one after, that was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Right. So, yeah. So like, fortunately in the market now, there's like so many non-alcoholic beers. It's great. I still get it. But yeah, I mean, it's like a whole different. So, and it's funny because as my kids were growing up, they'd be like, Dad, but you don't drink. I always joked about having a beer or something. And Dad, you don't drink. I'm like, I know I don't. And so now like they get it, they understand the bigger picture and why I made the decision that I did. So yeah, just super cool to see like I was able to change the future. So it's like Marty McFly, right? Going back to
I'm proud of you now,
the
Jay.
DeLorean. I didn't have the DeLorean, but I made the decision to change moving forward, and I think it was impactful to my family.
That's huge, bro. You just broke a generational curse.
Yeah.
And people don't really talk about that. So I have a 7-on-7 team. That's very important to me. It's like one of our like 3 key pillars is like, we're going to change households, right? I don't know what this kid's seeing in this life. I have no idea, right? But whatever you've seen, it's not what you'll be. You know what I mean? Because Uncle Tre's here now. You feel me? And I take that with great pride. The second thing is we're going to break generational curses. It don't matter how it look, right? For some people, it might be in a sex addiction. Some people might be a drug addiction. It might be alcoholism. It doesn't, who knows? But you're going to be the one who breaks it. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot, right? Because it's all you've seen. You've been conditioned into it.
Right.
It's not even that you do it on purpose. It's like
behavior.
It's innate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's more innate than almost brushing your teeth. So with that said, man, when you see somebody like you to make a decision, you're like, you know what? There's no negotiation with me right now. Do you know how hard that is when you don't negotiate with yourself?
Yeah.
Like I did. Like my one friend, he told me straight up. He said, bro, why? I asked him straight up. I said, why are you so committed? He said, I don't negotiate with terrorists. I said, hold on, bro. Time out. Time out. I said, what do you mean by this? He said, you got to think about the negative side of you. You don't want that negative side there. What is a terrorist? You don't want that mug there. He's just there.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't negotiate with terrorists. And when he said that, I was like, it makes sense of why you're so successful.
Solid.
You know what I'm saying? Because you don't negotiate with the negative side of you. What are you saying? Excuse me. You understand me?
Yeah.
So I want to commend you in that, man, because you said to yourself in that position, at least in my eyes, I'm not going to negotiate with this curse.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
It's my choice. I chose that it is done, so it's done. Do you know how hard it is to stand on that?
Well, the light switch was on for not doing it, right?
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's it. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that I've always been good at is like when I hold myself accountable to something, like it's on. So, I mean, that's I'm doing it or, all out. Like it is what it is. Like, I mean, if I think back, like I was doing fitness boxing for, several years and I wanted to be a boxer. So, I went out and I learned how to box. And yeah, I mean, it's, I think I was 46 years old when I did it, right?
Man.
So, sparred in training, probably 7 or 8 different times.
Okay.
I fought in in front of probably about 1,000 people.
Okay.
So, I didn't win, but super crazy
got in,
to
so you
do
won.
it, right? So
You're
yeah,
right.
I mean, just the challenge myself and like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm not going to back out. Like
Right.
I'm going to be committed to. So,
Right.
Things like that. Like I always try to make sure that if I agree to something that I fulfill it,
Right.
I'm not going to fail because I don't try.
Right.
There's going to be other reasons that I fail. So it's not effort or energy. I mean, I'm going to be fully committed. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
I like that, man, because I feel like a lot of people say they're going to do it, but their actions don't add up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we've been around people, especially in sales. I can imagine that you see it so often. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
you may say one thing, but boy, I done seen you do another. You know what I mean?
All the time.
So I want to ask you this question, man. Like, you almost found yourself in sales in a way. You know what I mean? Like you've been through probably a lot of different jobs. I know I have in my personal life, but you've done sales for a very long time. When did you know, like, yeah, like this is me? Like, I know what I'm doing now. Like, when did you feel that?
Yeah, so this is a great story, I'll tell you. So when I was growing up, I mean, I was, I always felt like, we weren't well off, right?
Right.
So, it was like, my mom and dad have a different opinion, but I don't. So, growing up, I got this mailer in the mail. It was a catalog like, hey, you can be part of this Sunshine Sales Club and you can go out and sell wrapping paper and greeting cards. And so, dude, I mean, I used to rely on this. There was this catalog like you could flip through and pick out like, oh, I want a skateboard. That's my prize for going out and selling this stuff.
Right.
It had different tiers and like points, and so I'm like, well, I can go out and knock door to door. So like that was my foot prospecting. Like I was out
Wow.
knocking doors. I mean, probably 7, 8 years old. Running through the neighborhood. I'd have my catalog with me from the Sunshine Sales Club, and I'd knock on the door. And so, one of the things, like I started to develop sales techniques that I still, at this point use. It's crazy. Like when
That's cheating, Jim, because you told me it's just a conversation. You've been having this conversation forever.
Long time. Yeah, so like I would knock on the door, and instead of staring at the door, waiting for the person to come, like, oh, this guy's going to sell me something, I would always turn around and put my back to the door. And then, when somebody would answer, like, oh, hey, I would act surprised, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there, right? And that kind of throws people off. Like,
Right.
They're not used to that. They're waiting for someone to give them a sales pitch right out of the gate. So, it was like then, like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like, I'm getting good success out of
Right.
this. Then you start to refine and, you start to think more and more like, okay, this is really cool. I could be a sales guy. And, just, I feel like my mom was always buying or selling something, but she was always negotiating. So, I really kind of from her learned a lot of negotiation tactics and,
Right.
Little things that it's like, you don't realize the things like that you pick up. But yeah, I mean, it was always like routinely like my baseball team. She was the treasurer of the, Pony League baseball team that I was in. And, she would negotiate like uniform deals and like stuff like that I was standing there listening and I'm like,
Your mom's a savage, man.
yeah, like I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool because, I'm learning stuff, not just relational, but, behavioral, tactical,
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm a hands-on learner, I feel like. So, throughout my career in sales, like, I've always kind of picked up, little bits and pieces. Like there was a dude that I used to work with and, I still to this day, I'm not going to say his name, but like if he sees this, he'll know. Like he would sit and, shake his head and, I'm like, hey, that really, and people like know that you're paying
Right.
attention,
They
right?
know
You're
for a
acknowledging, you're listening.
Right.
I would have eye contact with him. I'd
Right.
sit and I'd shake my head and I'm like, oh, I just did that. And like you
You
don't even
got
know you're
yourself.
doing it, right?
Right.
And it happens. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always been a sales guy,
Okay.
but more so, developing into leadership roles along the way is like, hey, I've got a lot to offer people, so I feel like my ability to take what I know and teach others or challenge others, right? So sometimes you can't teach people, but you have to challenge them to excel and challenge
Wow.
them to be better. So, I feel like I've been good at that. Like sometimes of making people uncomfortable is really, like I always say, like you got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable because it's
Come on
coming.
now.
So you know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Right.
So I challenge people, but I challenge them to do things differently or to look at things differently. I think is the most critical piece, to being a leader. And if you have visibility or a vision, how do you shape other people to see that same vision?
Right.
How do you teach them, without saying, do this, do this, do this? Have you thought about or have you tried? What's your opinion on this? Are there
Language.
different ways that you can say and then get them to understand the do.
Right.
It's just really an agreement, right? You're
Right.
making an agreement with them to challenge themselves to do better. So
I agree.
I think maybe it's a little bit more tactical at that point. As a leader, you have to develop yourself to understand there's more steps than just, snapping the whip at somebody and saying, hey, do this, and do this, or, your forecast needs that, or do this. And,
Right.
It's like, hey, if you want to do this, then here are the steps that you need to take. So it's a little bit more involved. It's, I think it's not, not what you say, but it's how you say it sometimes.
Ooh,
That's,
say that
that's critical.
again,
So,
Jim. They don't know what that means. Say it again. And I love that quote.
Yeah.
Say it one more time for the people in the back.
It's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's important. Yeah.
It's crazy because people don't understand tone.
Yeah.
Like, tone really matters.
Tone, pauses. Pauses are more important than tone, right?
It matters, man. And the thing is that I'm learning as I get older. I'm not in no type of old age. I don't even like to say I'm getting old because I'll be lying to myself. I'm not even 30 yet. But with that said, man, it's like you notice. It's like, okay, I said the same thing this way, and you didn't pick it up.
Right.
But once I changed my tone, so I tell people I don't argue with people. That's why I said we could talk about it. Or the second option, we can go in this back alley and box about it, and that's okay too. You know what I mean? I'm not a type to argue because once I start arguing, I start screaming, what's gonna happen? You're gonna stop listening.
Yeah, defensive,
You know what I mean?
Yep, shut down.
I don't got time for that. I prefer just to talk to you and see what you feel.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna talk to you again. Now, if you want to get disrespectful, there's that second option now. You know what I mean? So like I love on how you're coming across. So I want a secret tip from Jim. Like, what's a secret sales tip that you use personally that many people don't know, but you do your little move and you know you landed it. I want to know your secret sales tip.
Yeah, so I love the ask a question and shut your mouth. You don't say a word. The first person to talk loses. And I mean, I've had some very uncomfortable long pauses. And, you know, I'm in the office the other day. Joyce is sitting there in the side chair with me, and I'm on a call. And, you know, it was the point where that uncomfortable became uncomfortable for her as an audience member, right? So, like, think about the situation then.
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna win, right? I'm more stubborn than you. You're not gonna out stubborn me. So, I'll give you this uncomfortable pause, and I'm going to see what your answer is because I'm going to wait for it. So, I mean, at that point, like I would say, I mean, it was maybe 10 or 12 seconds, but that feels like a lifetime to
Seriously,
people when there's no noise that's happening and like they want to fill that space. You know, it's just, and I've kind of said to her, like, you know, it makes people really uncomfortable when they don't know what's going on. And almost so to the point where if that pause is long enough, they'll say, what are we waiting for? That you just lost, right? That's a sales 101. If you have to ask me what we're waiting for, and now I get to reinforce my message to you.
Right.
I get to have that conversation again. I get to talk about the value that we've created, you know, the opportunity that you have to take advantage of. So yeah, I mean, it's super tactical, but I mean, there's times where when you ask it, like then the follow-up question becomes a buying question.
Okay.
Okay, so how do I do this? Or, you know, that sounds really great.
Right.
You know, you start to hear those like, you know, the answers that are like the sales that are moving to a yes, right? Because that uncomfortable pause when you get it's kind of what I would translate as a no is like, oh, well, what are we waiting for? Or, you know, how come you're not talking? Or those are like not yets. But when you hear those, like after that uncomfortable pause, like well, how do I do this? Or how do I sign up? Or, you know, what's the next steps? Like those are all progressions to a yes. So I think sometimes if you leverage that uncomfortable pause where you just shut your mouth, like it gives people an opportunity to kind of revisit, like, okay, where are we at in the process?
Wow.
You know, so maybe mentally they're not used to that. And I think a lot of times salespeople, they want to fill that space, right? So I had a guy that used to work for me who would always say, you know, I know you always tell me this, like I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. I got to use the right ratio.
Right.
Well, think about it. Like, I mean, most salespeople are talkers. So, you know, they want to talk and hear themselves talk. I think sometimes you have to listen to how you're talking, but then you have to shut up and let other people talk to you, right? Because selling is actually listening. Right. It's not talking.
Explain that a little bit, because you said selling is actually listening, not talking.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So if you are trying to position something to somebody, you can't just say, well, we have this product, do you want to buy it? Right. They have to have a need for it, right? So you have to understand what their needs are. So if you're not asking them what their needs are, and you're not listening to what those needs are, then you can never present something that's a solution fit to a problem that they don't have.
You're a great husband. I already know it because you listen. That's it. Hey, listen. I heard that's the key variable.
She may tell you differently, but yeah. So I mean, dude. I mean, I'm getting excited about this, right? Because I think for me, it's like those little tactical challenges in
Right.
sales that, people don't pay attention to, right? They don't, I mean, I could ask you something and you could tell me now, and I might not use that for another couple days. I might use it in 10 minutes. I might use it, in 10 hours. Like if you tell me something, I always say, like, put it in the backpack. Somewhere along
Mm.
this hike, we're going to need that information. So if you take it and you put it into your head, like, okay, here it is, it's in the backpack. Eventually, there'll be a point where you pull it out, right? It's like you're on a hike and you need the hatchet to chop down a tree.
Right.
Well, that's in the backpack. You got to go to the backpack. So if
Mm.
you're listening and you absorb all of this, right, and you're taking all these mental notes and typing your notes or handwriting your notes, like that's one of the things you put a star by.
Right.
I'm going to come back to that. That's a
Wow.
pain point, right? So,
Right.
if you talk about like a business outcome, well, how do I solve for your business outcome? I've got a product that's a fit. So then eventually, when you open the backpack and pull the axe out, you say, hey, when we talked earlier, we were talking about this pain point that you had. And, I think where there's really an opportunity or really a fit for this is XYZ product, right? And that's where you put it into the conversation. And now you're talking about their business gap, which drives them to buy a product or solution from you, as opposed to you sending them a white paper and say, oh, hey, here's this white paper on this product that we sell. Do you want to buy it?
Right.
What's the answer? Yes or no?
Right.
And what's the motivator? There isn't one. It's just a piece of paper with a product set on it, right? So they have no idea that solves their problem. But if you ask them the questions to get them to open up to you and tell you, hey, here's my business gap, here's how you solve it, and it's in the backpack, you can pull it out, and then you start to have that intelligent conversation, and they go, wow, this guy really gets it, right? So I mean, I think that's one of the things that separates people is like there's people who talk and there's people who listen. The people who listen and pay attention have a better opportunity than the people who are just talking.
And now that you said that, I've been trying to change my ratio because I do love to talk. That's why I have a podcast. You know what I mean? But ultimately, man, I also listen really well. And I listen with intent because my mom always taught me be aware of your surroundings. Doesn't matter on what you're going through and what's happening, be aware of your surroundings. You never know the circumstance. You never know the situation. Part of it's probably growing up in the hood a little bit, but you know what I mean? It gave me some insight on life because there's times where even in situations where I'm like this, I'm the minority. You know what I mean? So I got to see on what's the flow of everything. So shut up, Trey, find out. You know what I mean? So I commend you for that as well, man, because I didn't even think about that in sales, to be honest with you. I'm about to start just being silent on the phone. Like, all these phone calls I be calling, they just hang up on me and we just not say shit. I'm just going to sit there. I'm trying to tell you. But ultimately, man, that is huge, bro, because I've never heard of anything like that. Like, yo, this is what we're offering, but it sounds like you need a little bit more. And then you just say nothing.
Yep.
Just nothing.
Shut your mouth.
You
Do you want to try it?
I low-key, I'm going to try it on somebody today. I'm going to try it on somebody. They're not even going to know what's coming.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Trey, why aren't you saying anything?
That's all. I don't know. I'm trying to find out why I'm not.
I'm waiting for you to answer my question. Right?
That is such a good idea,
I
Jim.
asked you about this.
And now I want you to answer the question. You gave me a cheat code, Jim.
It's a big cheat code.
Is that how you got your wife?
Nope.
You ain't say nothing?
Nope.
That's what you did?
No, I reeled her in. No, I gave her a ball cap at a college party. That's how we did it. It was a Phillies blunt hat.
That's why it worked.
And actually, we still have the hat.
See, yo, listen, smooth criminal right here, Jim Williams. And the reason why I say that, Jim, because it's how you walk in the room, bro. Like, I noticed you from the jump because, one, to me, you look like a Russian mafia boss, but that's just my personal opinion. But when you walked in the room, bro, you control the room with saying nothing. Like, how the hell did this man just do this? Because I pick up energy. That's what type of guy I am. I'm an energy guy. So I observe, I take in, I look at everybody. Like, how are you moving? What are you doing? I watched everybody do this, and you said nothing. I'm like, what the hell does he got that I'm misunderstanding right now? But now that I see and I get it, it brings that sense of like curiousness. Like now you want to talk, you want to know, right? Because I wanted to talk to you. I was like, I need to know who the hell this guy is. I want to know. You know what I mean? So like to see that and see how you do it, I'm starting to catch on a little bit. I'm about to start cheating. That right there is a cheat code.
Let me give you another cheat code. So this is my theory. This is Williams only, right? So this is my mindset. So if you walk into a room and there's somebody that's there that is the spotlight, the verbal, the loud, the boisterous, they're the ones that aren't confident. So if you think about it, they're trying to draw attention to themselves. They're trying to be the, the spotlight person, like, oh, look at me, I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or they're the person who doesn't have any confidence. If you can walk into a room and not say anything and be confident with yourself, and so one of the things I'll tell you is I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I'm me for me, and I'm me for my family. And if you don't like it, I'm okay with that. So if you have that mindset, like, I don't need to change for you to be friends with you. We're going to be friends because we're meant to be friends. I don't need to act differently around you. So like you said about me being the consistent or the constant, like that's me. That's my mentality, right? I don't have to be any different for anybody. I can be me for myself. And if you don't like that, I'm okay with that. But we may still be partners. We may still work together. We may still be friends. But I'm not going to change who I am for other people. So like, think about that. Like, I walk in and I observe and absorb like what's happening in the room, right? So I don't need to talk all the time. I don't need to tell people about me because I'm comfortable with me for me.
Right.
So like, that's my mindset is I'm going to walk in. I don't need to tell everybody who I am and why I'm here. I need to see what's going on and observe and know who these people are in the room. And I'll make a connection with you. Like, we'll talk.
Right.
It may not be like I'm the guy screaming in the middle of the room, or, I may sit back. Like, I'm kind of introverted to that regard. So like, if you see like any of the groups that we're in, like I'll be the guy that's on the periphery, right? The back, row watching to see what's happening. Like, okay, here's what's going on over there. Like, I don't miss much. Like, I absorb everything. Like, I'll tell you, at the end of the day, like, this happened over there. They were talking about this. This person was doing that. Like, it's all like
You're the best partner to have, ain't it?
There's like 19 people that have walked back and forth out of this door the whole time we've been talking. Like, I'm just paying attention to everything. So
I'm surprised you're not military. I really am.
Yeah, like, I don't miss anything. So
did you have military parents?
My dad was in the Army. Yeah.
There it is. I was like, this doesn't make sense. You're too tactical to not to be in the military or to at least play sports.
Yeah.
So did you play sports growing up as well?
I did, yeah. Ton of sports. I think probably my strong suit, I was a big baseball guy, really into baseball.
Position?
I was a catcher, but if you're athletic, you always are the pitcher or the shortstop.
Yeah.
I was a shortstop for a while. I was pretty decent at pitching, but what I was really good at was a catcher. And I think I started in that role because nobody wanted to suit up and do it.
Right.
You throw all that gear on in the middle of August.
Right? You're sweating.
You're making it happen behind the scenes, right? You're the guy that throws the ball back to the guy who's, pitching to people. And, I think a lot of people miss how critical that position is. And that was always what I loved. But at some point, I'd say probably high school, we were in the gymnasium in the wintertime doing, like off-season training, and we had this elevated mound, and the back of the wall behind in the gymnasium was like this cream color, like off-white, and then it was a red, where the, what are they, pads for like the basketball?
Yeah, I got you.
But they'd put the basketball hoop up, and, that's where the mound was.
Right.
So I was struggling to pick the ball up. Coming off of that red and white ball, coming off of the red and white wall.
Mess your eyes up.
I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, I can't see. And I told the coach, I'm like, I'm having a hard time seeing the ball in here. Like, I don't know what it is. Well, at that point, it wasn't go get your eyes checked. It was you're going to left field, right? So that was a big setback for me. Like, I thought I was going to be the up and coming catcher on the varsity team, and I couldn't see the ball in the gym, which then, is completely different when you're outside, right? You've got these big green trees around you, and, it's a whole different story. So, so I shifted into left field, and, I adapted, and, it was what it was, right? So, I was always into baseball. I played basketball. I ran cross country in high school.
Wow.
To stay in shape for other stuff, right? So that was one of my...
I could never do cross country. I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, it's not that I don't have the mindset for it. It's just like I get irritated with running.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a marathon guy. I'm a sprinter. That's why I played receiver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I sprint.
The cheetah.
Yep. I sprint. Then I rest.
Yeah.
And then I sprint again. That is what I do. But with that said, man, the one thing that I've noticed about you, bro, like, you're extremely tactical to the point where, like, I could see you visualizing and remembering exactly where everything is being placed.
Yeah.
So like to me, that makes you like the perfect person. Like if we're going into war, you're the strategist. Like I done seen this, I done seen the hilltop, I done seen this. He has to be here, they have to be there. To me, those type of people are the most interesting people because they spend the most time with themselves. They spend the most time building themselves, creating knowledge for themselves, and really looking into themselves and saying, I'm comfortable where my feet are. It's one of the things that you said is like, bro, there's not many people who can get me out of my comfort zone. I think what makes people uncomfortable with that is the fact that they can't get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's times where, because me personally, like, I love to talk, but you'll see me shut up, and people always wonder, like, is there's something wrong with Tre? No, I'm just looking at the situation. Yeah. You know what I mean? And honestly, like, now that I look at it, because you're giving me a lot of, like, thoughts to think about right now. As I look at it, I've always been like that because, like, I read the room. Like, I read to see on how you're coming about. Who's the liar? That's my biggest one. Like,
Yeah.
who's the liar in the room?
Yeah.
There's always one.
What are they going to say that
You know
I'm going to
what I'm
remember,
saying?
right?
Like,
That's
it's
the backpack. You put it in the backpack.
Put it in the backpack.
Yeah.
I want to see on how you're coming across. And then I always look for the brute. Now, the reason why I say the brute, you know what I mean? I want to see who's going to be the tough guy when it's time to be the tough guy.
Yeah.
Because you never know the situation, but if that's the case and it becomes a situation, I'm going to him first. Bro, we got to go do this.
Yeah.
It's typically the quiet guy.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's the guy, he ain't saying nothing to nobody. He's just chilling in the corner, being devious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I respect that about you, man, because I also take that sense, and there's times where I'm like, it's not a time to speak. It's a time to listen. You know what I mean? I feel like as you grow as a man, and this is for the people who are watching, like, you have to know the balance, when to speak and when to shut the hell up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a science to that.
And I'm good at it, but I'm not great at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm learning that. Like, there's times even in life now where I'm like, yeah, they can't know that. They're not ready for it. They don't deserve that yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when did you find yourself, right? Like, if you had to go, better question, if you had to give your son right now the best advice you could give him about being a man in this current world, what would be the one thing that you would tell him?
I mean, I think really my guidance would be the friend who's the reliable person, right? The one that people can count on.
Right.
When they need something, they come to you, and you do it because that's just you. You know, be you for you, and then do for others. I think is really the. You know, I've always been giving. I feel like that's been one of my traits that's been a constant is. I don't care what it is, like I'll drop everything and go help you. Or, you know, if the neighbor comes over, hey, I've got this, you know, go in the shed and grab it. Or, you know, I got a tool for that. Or, you know, hey, I'll come over and give you a hand with it.
Right.
You know, anything like a friend, you know, call me, hey, I got to do this. All right, I got a truck, I'll come pick it up for you.
That's
right.
Huge,
or,
man.
You know, anything like that. So like, I think if you are always worried about others and not yourself, you know, be that person who's giving and helpful to others, I think is really, you know, what I would love to see. And I mean, and I think he does that, right? So I feel like, you know, I'm learning more and more that I was a lot like my father.
Wow.
You know, and I didn't have the greatest relationship with him because of alcoholism. So, you know, I always, you know, looking back now, like there's more and more things that I do. And I'm like, holy shit, that was my dad. Right. So,
Right.
You know, I see it, or, you know, Joyce will say the same thing. Like, she's like, oh, that was your dad right there. I'm like, yeah, it was.
And don't bring him out of me now.
Yeah. So, you know, so things like that, like, you know, eventually if my son looks back and says, my dad used to do that all the time, or, you know, so like it's funny because there'll be times where, you know, I'll stand with my hands on my hips. And so, you know, when my son's playing high school football, you know, in between a play, like he'll be standing there with his hands on his hips.
And you'll be like,
and Joyce is like, do you see your son out there on the 50-yard line? He's got his hands on his hips. I'm like, yeah, I know. And it's not like I said, hey, when you're in between plays, you have to put your hands on your hips. Like I do it. You know, I'm working out or something, I'll stop and my hands go on my hips. And next thing I know, he's doing it out in the middle of the football field. So, like, I think he picks up on stuff. And I mean, again, I think sometimes it's reflexive, like it just happens without knowing or like without thinking. So, yeah, I think, you know, as much as I'm like, hey, we're going to go over and, you know, help Gigi do this, or he's like, all right, let's go. So, you know, I think, you know, if he can give the way that I feel like I've been able to give to others, like I'll be pretty proud of him at that point.
You said something that kind of stuck with me and sticks with me is like, you are your father regardless of what you think of your parents or not. You know what I mean? Like, you are a image of your parents. It's noticing what you do and don't like and realizing what you do and don't want to do from the stuff that they did. You know what I mean? Wow, that was a tongue twister. But like,
No, it was good.
that was good though, right? But ultimately, man, when you see that and you feel that, because I had that issue too. Like, I love my dad to death. That's my dog. That's my homie. You know what I mean? But growing up, he had a lot of different issues that I would never agree with, right? And at some point in my high school age, I kind of acted a little bit like him and realized like this is not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you were always this smooth criminal that you are right now, but when did you really find yourself saying like, you know what, I'm cool with me. If you don't mess with me, go ahead about your day.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, oh man, I don't think I've ever measured it. So, I mean, I think one thing I can say is I've been super introspective for a long time, and I'm very analytical. So I'll analyze, what's happening, or a problem, or I'm like, okay, how do I solve this? And so, I think through things like that. So, trying to be self-analytical and be a better person, I think is probably something that I would say probably 14, 15 years maybe
Wow.
that, I've kind of started to focus on and progress. And I mean, listen, it's not over, right? I
Right,
mean, I can always be
100%.
better. And, I know that there's gaps and opportunities for me, but I mean, I think really at this point, like I've kind of developed, I would say pretty consistently over like this last 7 years, maybe,
Okay.
of that mindset of like, I'm me for me and I don't care if you don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm comfortable with me.
Right.
So if you're not comfortable with me, that's not my fault. It's your fault that you're not comfortable with me. So
Right.
I'm okay with that. That mindset is like so freeing. Like I can tell you, dude, I'm like, I rest very easy at night knowing that I'm comfortable with me, and if nobody else likes it, I still sleep pretty well. Right?
That's a
So
bar right there. Hey, you heard him. If he don't like you, shit, I don't care. But that's cool, man. So like, you obviously have had people guide you in your life that you respect, that you feel like is a great role model to you. So who was the biggest role model in your life? Because for me, it was my mom. You know what I mean? Second to that would probably be, honestly, my dad, because I've seen him become from literally dirt, like didn't treat people right, didn't do anything right, to getting himself clean and doing the right thing.
yeah,
So I can respect that because it shows that you've gotten from dirt and then you looked up and seen that there was light. Let's get to it.
yeah.
And you got to it. So I want to know, who's your biggest role model for you personally?
Man, I think if I don't say the right thing, then she's gonna be mad at me. But I feel like my mother was probably one of the biggest role models for me, just because I spent a ton of time with her, right?
Okay.
So I mean, she's running us back and forth to practices. Just always with her, right? We'd go garage sailing on a Saturday morning. I was with her. We'd be
Right.
out and running around going shopping or something. I was with her. So I feel like growing up, like I learned a ton of stuff from her. The other role model I would say is my dad's mom, my grandmother. Just I think the way that she carried herself is something that I always looked up to. I thought it was interesting, just the quiet nature that she had, but she was a very she would command respect by being who she was.
Right.
So she was very giving, always the one to pick up the tab at the dinner that the family was
Wow.
out to, or so. It's funny because if we go out as a family, like extended family, right? So I got my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, their family. Like I'm picking up the tab. I don't care if I don't have any money. I'm getting the tab. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Like that's
I
something
got
that you
that from my
hold in.
grandmother.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it's
What did you call your grandmother? Gigi? What did you call her?
no, I feel like she was Graham or
Mm.
grandma or yeah, but so like there was a point where my dad threw me out of the house and I lived with
Wow.
my grandmother. So like I moved in with her. I mean, I had a bedroom in the house, and I would get scolded for coming home late at night, and she'd be like, "Hey, you got home kind of late last night. I'd like you to be in. If you're gonna stay here, I'd like you to be in a little bit earlier."
Right.
And I did it because I didn't want to make her mad. So
You had to.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, so she was probably like outside of my mom, probably the next role model that I had. Um, but I mean, the thing is, like growing up, right? You learn stuff from people,
100%.
regardless of whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So, there's things that you see. So there's people who are role models, but they don't shape you to be them. They help you make the decision not to be them. right? So
That's a good
you,
one.
you learn from people like, hey, I see you doing this and I don't want to do that. So you've been a role model to me to push me in the other direction,
Right.
to do what I feel is the right thing, not what you're doing. So, I mean, you witness things that happen as you're growing up and developing
Right.
that you decide, like, hey, I don't want to do that. I'm
Mm.
going to do that. You've helped me to understand that. So I'm going to do this instead.
Mm.
Right. So it helps you to develop decisions.
It's like a subconscious role model.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're saying it right now. I'm actually picturing it because there's certain things, again, that I told you, like, I didn't want to do that my
Yeah.
dad did. You know what I mean? And some parts of me at one point in time, I was young, I fell into that. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, it got to a point where I was like, you know what? No, that's not who I am. You know what I mean? I realized that that's not what I wanted to be. So, like, you talked about a few times, right, in discussion about you and your dad's relationship, and it's been here, right? Because I'll be honest with you, me and my dad's relationship was like this, and sometimes it was way down there, and I had to go pick it back up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you don't mind sharing a little bit to somebody that might be out there struggling with a parent or struggling with somebody that they consider not an enemy, but like somebody that's not too close, would it be some advice that you could give them and also bring it and elaborate it to your own life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like the relationship that I had with my father wasn't great. So, there was a point where, I mean, and this goes back maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was talking with Joyce and I said, like, hey, I need to talk to my dad. Like, I need to have this conversation with him.
Wow.
So, I wanted to express like my feelings, where I felt there were opportunities, where I felt like we could get along better. Because growing up, it was like, you're doing it wrong, don't do it that way. It had to be his way,
Right.
military, right?
Right.
Very regimented. So,
Right.
and if I was wrong, then I got in trouble. And, so like, I feel like, at that point, yeah, I don't, sorry.
No, it's good, man, because trust me, man, I've been in this roller coaster, and I'm just going to be honest here. This is me just being vulnerable. It was this roller coaster for so long, bro. It got to a point where I told my dad straight up, like, listen, you got two options with me. And this one's not talk about it or box about it. This one's different. This one is either you could be in my life or you cannot.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to tell you where I'm at. I'm going to tell
Right.
you on where I've seen our relationship at, and I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I did that at a young age because I was so fed up, bro. Like, I was in a position where I was like, bro, you've almost made me suicidal, my boy. So, like, if that is the case, like, I love you enough that I want this relationship.
Yeah.
But the only way this is going to happen is if you hear what the hell I'm about to say to you.
Right.
And I'll be honest, bro, my dad took it on the chin, man, and we didn't speak for 3 weeks.
Okay.
I'll never forget it. We ain't speak for 3 weeks. I was like, okay, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
And then I remember the first day he called me back. He said, I'm going to change and I'm going to prove it.
Okay.
Since then, my man's proved it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So, again, we didn't have the greatest relationship growing up, man. And again, he been through his own things. You know what I mean? That's the one thing I can definitely appreciate about growing up. You start to realize that your parents are human and
Yeah.
not just your parents.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me how weird that transition was for you, because it was weird as shit for me. When
Yeah.
I finally see my parents as, oh, you're human, you're not superhuman.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I tried to have that conversation with him,
Right.
and his opinion, right? Because everybody's got their own lens.
100%.
We're good. I think we're good. You live in Pittsburgh. I'm in West Virginia. I think we're okay. I don't see a problem.
Right.
So, to me, it was like, okay. So at least I took that weight off of my shoulders.
Right.
I think if at that point, so my dad passed away 3 years ago, and
Sorry to hear that.
so at the point where he was on his last days, I was there with him, and I had a chance to kind of lay next to him in bed, and I didn't have the conversation with him at that point,
Right.
but I had the conversation with myself that I wanted to have
Wow.
with him. So I didn't want to burden him as he was passing away
Right.
with that conversation to take with him,
Right.
but I wanted to get it off of my chest. And so I mentally talked through that as I was laying there in bed with him. And I can tell you, dude, it was like so freeing.
Wow.
And, I told Joyce about it. I said, for me, like, I just needed to talk and I needed to be heard.
Right.
So I didn't talk directly to him, but I had that conversation, and it was so refreshing that I got it out. I said what I needed to say, and I moved on.
Wow.
So,
And to be honest with you, I'm proud of you, man, because that takes a lot of work and that takes a lot of effort. And most people don't understand on what it's like to be there, bro, because to be honest with you, as a man, we already just discussed it, right? Even hearing the words I love you doesn't happen often. And then beyond that, right, like, we're talking about emotions. like your boy said, get up and rub some dirt in it. You're good.
Yeah.
When you're really not good at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the conversation that you were supposed to have, you weren't ready to have it anyway. You know
Right.
what I mean? So like for you to do that and realize as you're getting to this stage in life, you're like, you know what? I have no choice because if I don't, I won't be okay.
Yeah.
That's that moment of saying like, yo, like no offense to you, but fuck how you're feeling. You won't have to hear me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I commend you for that, man, because I remember what that was like for me. And that was one, terrifying. Start there. I was nervous as
Yeah.
shit. Like, terrifying. But two, like,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I can't tell you how many times I wrote my conversation down on paper to have with him. So, I mean, just in itself, like organizing my thoughts to, here's what I want to say to him. Here's the conversation. Here's what I need to make sure that he understands. Like, dude, I mapped it out. It was on paper. Like, hey, here's all of these things that are important to me to express. So like it didn't happen in person. Like I didn't actually have the conversation with him, but that was what I rehearsed in my head, and it was there. It was fresh. So I mean, it came out, and I had that self-talk while I was laying there with him, and it wasn't. And again, I didn't want him to take that with him.
right,
So I wanted to get rid of it,
right.
but it didn't belong to him. It belonged to me. So
Timing is everything, man.
Yep.
For real. So I see that you have a lot of tattoos on your body. I do too. And I'm a big believer, man. If you know Tre's going through something, he got a new tattoo somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, you'll know. Like, if you see me go, you're like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
It's a tattoo. Like, Tre, what's going on with you? What's wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I have a whole back tat, but everything that's on me, there's meaning behind it. So I see that you're also tatted up. So
Yep.
tell me the message. You know what I mean?
It's if you look in my entire arm, I've got a picture of Joyce right here. So this is her
Hey.
in the selfie in the car.
Okay,
and,
now.
we've got all of the the cars in front of her that are at the red light and the glasses. So everything that I have here is my family. I've got a sundial that my mother collects.
Wow.
The sundial has the time that I was born on the sundial. A lot of little stuff, but yeah, I mean, I've got, just things that make me think about my family.
Wow.
So every single one of them is super meaningful.
Right.
My daughter drew a sugar skull that I have on my arm. The only thing that's probably not is the light switch. So,
Right.
I got a couple other ones that are like some filler pieces, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, the big stuff that's kind of pieced around is all stuff that, I've got a coffee cup for my mother-in-law who drinks coffee all the time.
That's cool.
Just makes me think of it, right? She comes
Right.
to the house, she drinks out of the same cup. It's that cup that's tattooed on my arm.
Wow.
I've got the sundial for my mom. I've got my dad was always used to walk across the street and watch this blue heron in the creek that was right there. So I've got a big blue heron on the back of my arm from my dad. So
Man, so everything has meaning.
yeah.
That's
So
huge, man.
it connects me to my family, and those are the important things. So I keep them close, and they're right there for me. So
That's huge, man. I wanted to also ask you, what's the next piece? Because I'm a tattoo guy.
yeah.
And it's hard to get done. That's what what I tell people. They be like, "What are you getting next?" I'm like, to be honest with you, you're never really done.
Yeah.
You just choose when you're gonna
Right.
get the next one.
Yeah, and so the guy that I go to, he books a year in advance, right? So, I mean, to even get on that calendar for 4 hours is kind of tough in the first place.
Right.
So, like, if you don't book it when you're there getting something done, and, a year from now, it gives you a lot of run up to
Right.
when you actually have to decide. But, I mean, I think for me, like, I've got some stuff that kind of comes up towards my neck,
Okay.
but I feel like I want to go onto my neck.
Man, I'm trying to tell you, there's something I want to get on the back of my neck. I've been trying to because I have something here.
Yeah.
It says continue. So I'll give you guys a little nugget about Tre Tipton. Every single tattoo on me does mean something, but the three as of right now, getting into 4 soon, just don't know where it's gonna go. I tried to kill myself 4 times, right? So I have semicolons all on my body,
Okay.
reminding myself this is not the end to your sentence.
Yeah.
It's just a moment and it's just a gap.
The pause,
The pause,
the
right?
uncomfortable silence.
There it is, right? So for me, again, going into it, this arm is going to be an all-word sleeve, only quotes.
Okay.
So quotes, maybe like small images, but just strictly quotes.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because words get me going.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They get me moving, they get me thinking. So even though as I'm thinking about it right now, I have a semicolon here, I have a semicolon here, and I have a semicolon here. The reason being is because here I was almost dead,
Okay.
right? Lung collapsed. Back here, I tried to cut my throat. just being honest. And the other one that I have is right here on my chest, but it's the opposite of my heart.
Okay.
And it says, keep on keeping on. That for me is one of the bigger ones because it's like at one point in time, I was like, yeah, this is done with. Like, I'm cool. Because I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. I've dealt with a lot. But when you're not taught on how to cope, you just do anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Until you actually learn and refine your tools to keep you protected from yourself. Again, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Because there's times when you're your own terrorist, right? Like, there's probably a point in time where you're like, bro, I shouldn't be drinking, but I'm drinking anyway. You know that's not you, Jay.
Yeah.
That's why you was like, I'm cool. You stopped negotiating with the terrorists inside of you.
Right.
That might be a new segment. I ain't going to lie, but I like the sound of it. But ultimately, man, every tattoo on me does mean something. And the reason why I have each and every single one of them is because there's a time and space where I did not feel Tre.
Yeah.
I was not Tre. And there's a couple happy ones. And somebody said something to me yesterday and was like, get out of living in the negative and get into the living in the positive.
Right.
What that means to me is stop surviving, start thriving. Because I know you've been in a position, right, where, bro, like, it's constant where it's like, bro, like, why can't you get right? Like, why is everything around me consistently negative? It's not because everything around you is consistently negative. That's not ever going to change.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Everything in the world's negative.
You know what I'm saying?
You
like,
got to find the light.
There you go. What is the light in your life?
Yeah.
Who is the light in your life? Are you the light in your life? Are you the beacon or are you the darkness? And when I start asking myself those type of questions, I said, you know what, Tre? Choices. It all goes back to choices, perspective, and time. Choices, perspective, time. Choices, perspective, time. And this is what I mean by that. Choices. No matter what it is in life, you get a chance to choose.
You have two choices.
Either you
Good
do
or bad. You do it or you don't do it, right?
It's that simple, right?
Yeah. You're going to be right half of the time.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But then you go into perspective, right? I tell the kids this all the time because it's important. What you give off, there better be an integrity behind you. There better be. Like, I don't care on who you believe you are. If you believe that is who you are, then there better be some integrity there. Because if not, right? Perception, okay? Perception, 1. Reality, 0.
Right.
Because reality sets in. The perception I give you is your reality.
Right.
There's nothing else to be said.
Everyone's reality is different, right?
You
Everyone's perception is different. So
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I've come in this position now where you even get into time. Are you spending or are you investing? When you spend time, bro, you don't get that time back. But you invest time with your kids.
Right.
You invest time in the people that you want to spend with. You invest time in your mentors, your mentees. That's where I want to be at. I want to invest. I'm tired of spending. I spent a lot. You know what I mean? If I had $1 for every time I spent too much time, I wouldn't even be here. I'd be a billionaire somewhere else. You know what I mean? So I'm tired of spending time. So with that said, man, this has been an investment for me. This conversation has not only, I hope, helped people who are going to view this, but it's also going to help me. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you for coming on, man, for real.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
No problem, man. So again, this has been Tre'd Talk. I am your host, Tre Tipton. This is my guest, Jim Williams. And if you didn't know, you already know. Tell everybody you know. Matter of fact, I'm going to say it again. Tell your aunt. Tell your uncle. And if you got an Uncle Jim, make sure he knows too. I'm Tre Tipton. I'm out of here.